if the media actually talked about that hospitals don't run and that 100% of nurses get scared if something respiratory happens and there's not a respiratory therapist right there immediately, that it's a problem, then maybe people would actually know.
Hello, welcome to Scrubs Unzipped, where we unveil healthcare's hidden passions. I'm your host, Anne Marie, a fellow respiratory therapist, and I have a special guest with me, and she is also a respiratory therapist. So, can you please introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. I'm honored to be able to come and hang out with all of my fellow healthcare heroes. I'm Brandy Kasich. I am currently a respiratory therapist in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been a therapist for 15 years, started out actually in Virginia at a small hospital, which is amazing because then I didn't have to compete to learn intubations and gases and things like that. Eventually decided that I wanted to go to the level 4 that we sent all of our patients to. So I went down the street to the University of Virginia, and then eventually came down to Atlanta, and I've been here for the last 10 years.
Wow,
Yeah,
10 years. Well,
I
you're
know.
committed.
A whole
You're
decade.
committed. You're
Yeah.
committed. You in this. So you like have a lot of experience in healthcare and respiratory. So what's one memory or moment that solidified your passion for your chosen career? Can you share a particular patient story or encounter that reminded you of why you ventured into healthcare?
In 2020, our hospital started on their diversity and inclusion journey, which a lot of hospitals did. You know, the murder of George Floyd and everything that kind of happened after that. Everybody was like, we care about diversity, right? And we started our journey and we started this council, and I got on. I ended up going back and getting my master's just because I loved the work and equity as it looked in healthcare. And so I was taking care of this family, and it was really just a kid. He was ejected from the car and was paralyzed from the waist down. He was with us in the PICU, not like post that accident, but because he had been sitting too close to a radiator and the radiator burned him because he couldn't feel it because he didn't have a lot of care. There weren't people at home to kind of really take care of him. And he had been labeled since he got there as um, angry, didn't want to participate in care, one of those patients that they all talked bad about. And I had never taken care of him. So I started this hair care equity in the PICU at Scottish just because there's no products. Nobody knew how to do hair. And so this white nurse walks up to me and she was like, I really want to do his hair. And I was like, all right, let's do it. Like, say less, let's do it. Right. So we go in there. And of course, he's like, I don't know, you might be one of them. And I'm like, I'm wearing a twist out. Like, let me do your hair. So I end up doing his hair, and he's like, we're talking the whole time. And so he was there for a long time. And probably the second time we ended up doing his hair, he stopped and he turned around and looked at me and was like, y'all love me. It's like, yeah, dude, like we want you to have good care. And it was just kind of like this light that went off, that the things that happen in the hospital, once again, are so impactful on people's lives that if I looked into things that little kids of color needed that was different than what we are currently offering in the hospital, that I could make an impact on those days of their lives too. That kid went on to go up to rehab, but came back down multiple times looking for me and asked me to do his hair before he went back just because he wanted to talk and he wanted to, and it was really impactful that I could, get that close to him and have a conversation, and he could really realize that healthcare workers did care about him. We do care about him, and there are people there that really want him to get better.
Wow, those are two very impactful stories. Like, you should write a book, girl.
Most of it would be so inappropriate. I don't know if we could publish it.
Because the first one where you talked about handing over the twins to the parents and the parents just having that appreciation because sometimes they call respiratory like the bat signal. They They send the bat signal, and that's when we
Yep.
come, and that's when we do our thing, and then we head out.
Yep.
So, because sometimes I feel like respiratory is one of those un it's like an undercover profession. Like we are
Absolutely.
so needed, and when we're not there, people notice, but it's so undercover that even during the pandemic that happened, we're after the pandemic now, like it was a respiratory pandemic. There was a little bit here and there, but what do you feel could be a catalyst or a breaking of the secret? Like, what do you think could reveal the secret of respiratory and have us broadcasted around the world?
One of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to healthcare is the media, and really the media altogether, right? But I found myself saying so often when the news was covering what nurses were doing, and that they were scared, and like everybody was on the ventilator, and I found myself saying to people, who do you think's running the vent?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're talking about nurses and doctors, but like when we have to pull a tube or you have to take a vent from somebody and give it to somebody else, the nurse is not doing that. But they didn't talk about that. Like, they showed them like outside of the room cheering because this patient got extubated, and I'm like, they're outside the room. Who do you think's pulling the tube? So I think that if media actually, you have all these days like we love nurses and doctors, and they get free donuts and all that. Like, if the media actually talked about that hospitals don't run, and that 100% of nurses get scared if something respiratory happens and there's not a respiratory therapist right there immediately, that it's a problem, then maybe people would actually know.
Mm.
I think too that our recruitment strategies haven't really been like, for a long time, I feel like we've just kind of gotten the fallout. Like, people go to apply to nursing school and they get on this wait list and they're like, oh yeah, what about respiratory? Right. And so then those people kind of fall
Mm.
into the program. But there were never people that came and were like, I want to be a respiratory therapist. Like, that just hasn't been a big thing. Even me, I didn't fall into that. I mean, I wasn't going to nursing school first, but I was going to med school. Like, I don't know a lot of people who just were like, I wanted to grow up and be a respiratory therapist. But if the
Mhm.
way that they recruited for nursing, and they go out to all these schools and they talk about the jobs we have and the units we have, if they did that at high schools, community colleges, if they went out and talked about all the real careers that are in healthcare, I mean, I think it would be much less a secret.
Mm. That is so true. And I know that there needs to be more education about what respiratory therapists do and how important we are to the team, because a doctor and a nurse and x-ray tech and the environmental services, everybody has a part to play, and we're all a part of a team, and everyone should be validated and appreciated for the things that they do. Because have you ever tried to take care of a patient by yourself?
Yeah. And Medicaid, JACO will shut us down if environmental services didn't clean like they were supposed to. Like, none of us would
Hmm.
have a job.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, I agree.
yeah, yeah. Because there was a strike that happened a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't the nurses and the doctors who were striking. It was the underserved workers. They were the ones who the axillary, I don't know how to pronounce it, but the axillary staff were
Yep.
striking. So it's like we have a voice too, and we want you to hear our roar, and we want you to realize that we are important to patient care as well, and we need to be paid what our worth is. I just went on a rant. I don't know why, but I just
It's
felt that in my
true. Ooh, it's
spirit.
true.
And I just wanted everyone to know that I support, like, if you are part of a union,
Oh yeah.
if you are part of a team, because it's better when you are together in a cause than when you're by yourself in a cause.
Yeah.
Like
I
if
think
you
people
are,
don't understand their power as a group either. Like, when we
hmm,
group together, man, you can make a big difference.
yeah, it's definitely like there's power in numbers.
Mm, yeah.
power in numbers.
Yeah.
So I read your resume and I found out you have done something that I always wanted to do. You were a flight therapist.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Can you tell me about that?
yeah. So most pediatric transport teams, will have a respiratory therapist. So when I was in Virginia, the hospital that I went to from my first hospital was a level 4 and had a pediatric transport team. And then what they did was, instead of having a specific flight team, the transport team would just fly if the patient needed to fly. And so
Mm.
that was my first experience with helicopter transport. And when I say, girl, it's not a place to learn to be a therapist,
Mm-mm.
because even on just transport, the lines are so gray. Like, I would walk into work some days and be like, I want to be a paramedic today. And I'd be like, all right. And I'd get to do all the lines and the pumps and the drugs. And then the paramedic
Oh,
would do, like, it's
wow.
just everybody does everybody's job. And so learning how to push the limits on your super, super sick kids or the kids with high acuity, transport's not the place to do that. And so I saw some of the sickest patients and had to, like, really stretch my mind, because it was just me, a nurse, and a medic. Like, that's it. We're so used to having like another therapist backup, like a couple of nurses, like everybody just do their thing. That's it. That's it. And people run. Like, when they get a sick kid that they can't take care of and the transport team gets there, they run. Like, they're like, oh, y'all are here? Okay, good. Bye. So, it's definitely one of those things, like, you got to know. You got to know, because there's no doctor with you. And then that knowledge actually expanded when I came down here. My first job was on the pediatric transport team for our current hospital. And that was the same, that when we had to transfer an ECMO referral, a nitric patient, or even just a super high acuity, they would have to take a therapist. So they have a specific flight team, but if it was any inhaled gas or an ECMO candidate, they had to take a respiratory therapist. So I've flown a couple times down here too. And those are some of the scariest patients. I mean, yeah. Pushing the limits. Like, there were multiple times where it was just like, I know that what I'm doing, super high pressures, super high rate, like, that's beating up the lungs. But my job right now is to keep this patient alive till we get back to the
Good.
hospital. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a round of applause for you.
Girl, you can do it too. Yeah, it's
So
fun.
we talked a lot about your background and you just transferred from a clinical position to diversity inclusion. So beyond your professional capacity, what personal beliefs or experiences fuel your dedication to the cause of diversity and inclusion?
I had a rough childhood. And so my mom was an addict, and I was the oldest of 3 children in a small town where what things look like run everything. You know how those small towns where everybody's like, no, we don't want people knowing our business, but everybody already knows your
Mhm.
business because there's only a couple
Yep.
people. It was kind of one of
Yep.
those things. And so people didn't really want to talk about it. And what that also meant, because my dad wasn't involved, was that they couldn't help me, because that would be acknowledging that my mom was an addict. And so there were a lot of struggles. I was head of household for a long time. My younger brother and sister trying to just make sure that they didn't get the impact that I got. Um, we were evicted probably 5 times before I went to college. Um, one of my mom's boyfriends, like, set our house on fire. Like, just really, really bad. And so once I went to college, I finally, like, was like, I have to do something for me. I gotta, my mom finally got clean, and I ended up having to take care of her then. So I've been parenting for a long time, but I identify a lot with being in a space where you need support, you need something that an adult should give you, and not having adults that do it. And I feel
Mm.
like that's what happens a lot of time in the hospital, is these patients and even families sometimes who just don't know any better. You know, they come from either lower socioeconomic backgrounds or they just don't have medical knowledge, which is one of the big health equities that a lot of hospitals are working on now is health knowledge and being able to even have the conversation and know what we're talking about. And so wanting to be the adult that I deserved as a child has really driven, especially kind of, you know, this work now, what kind of person I want to be, um, everything.
Wow. Just remember that, like, you took your pain and your adversity and you turned it into something positive. And I
I
think
did. I never
that
thought about
is
it like that.
you never said it like that is just like mind blowing because I feel like even as people of color, we have always had to be the strong person or the strong
Yep.
woman, the strong black woman, the strong
Mhm.
everything, the
Mhm.
strong mother, the strong father. Sometimes you're
Yeah.
the father, the mother, you're
Uh-huh.
the sister, you're the
Yeah.
cousin, you
Yep.
everybody in the family.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so and it's just like sometimes you kind of have to put that aside and take care of yourself even when you are being everything to everyone else. I believe that me personally, like I still have to take care of myself and know where my limits are. So I wanted to ask you, you do great work at your job and with your family. So what self-care things do you do for to take care of yourself?
Girl, I'm a boxer.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I
Me
love it. Yeah,
too.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life, but like just there's something about boxing that like when you work on form and you're tired and you have to like think through, like I can't think about other things. And so
Mm,
being able to have this time where like I can just like get into my zone, like I can focus on what I'm doing and not worry about the things that I'm stressed about or I have anxiety about. Like there's something about it. But also I'm an introvert. Like
really?
yeah, so um I don't know if outgoing is actually the word. Like I'm social, right? Like
Hmm.
I like the things that I do at work, engaging with people and teaching and things like that. But I can only do it for a limited amount of time. And if I'm really gonna recharge, all the way by myself. Like I was talking to somebody today and I get the best sleep and have the best time when my husband is not here. Like when the house is empty and it's just me and my candle. Woo, girl, nothing better. Nothing better. So I'm a candle girl and I will just sit back with some wine in the dark with some candlelight and just enjoy my own company. And that has been a big game changer.
That is amazing because I'm actually an introvert as well. I'm like in between, like introvert and extrovert. They call those an ambivert.
Yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
like
yeah.
in between. Like sometimes I'm extra out because I do karaoke and I sing and stuff like that.
What?
And I play the saxophone.
I love
So-
the saxophone.
really?
Yes. I mean, I
Yeah,
love music, period. Like I love just all music, but I love the saxophone.
yeah, I play the alto saxophone, and then sometimes I can just be in my little corner listening to my music in my headphones and just be like by myself.
Are you an only
And
child?
I am an only child.
I feel like most ambiverts are only children because you have to
Really?
learn to like you got to learn to play by yourself. But then when you're out, you still enjoy being with people and you love being outgoing and all that stuff. But because when you're at home, you know, there's no siblings to play with. You have to learn to be
True.
okay in your own skin. I mean, I
Yeah.
completely made that up. There's no research to support that.
Well, I
That's
think
just how I
I
feel.
think that is very true because I was by myself a lot and I did have friends like I would like I have my sisters
Yeah.
they like they're not like related to me like by blood but we are like sisters like I was always over their house and we would just like talk and I would spend the night so I kind of was adopted to a lot of families.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And we all need a community.
Yes, and community is very, very, very important.
Yeah.
And so you got a chance to transfer from the bedside to another position that is more healthcare administration oriented.
Mhm.
How did you make that transition for people who are thinking about doing the same?
I figured out how I could link them. I am not like some people when they leave the bedside and they go to like their whether it's sales or administration or project management, when they go to those jobs, they're ready to leave the clinical side. And I was not, hence why I'm still PRN, at in the PICU. But I figured out how I could do both
Mm,
because the work that I'm doing is creating and giving and foundational ideas and concepts, belonging, inclusion, equity, unconscious bias, insensitive comments, things like that, but shaping it towards a specific population of clinicians. So really not necessarily what those things look like in the community, but what they look like in a hospital setting, right? Like what inequity looks like when you're taking care of a patient and how to identify it. When we're talking about is calling a physician by their first name in the patient room. And it usually only happens, in my experience, in my 15 years, with Black females, where I will call because we do that out at the nurse's station and we're talking, and people don't understand how disrespectful that is. Um, that or even just with women, period, that women physicians get disrespected so often, even by patients and families, where they're like, "Yeah, but when's the doctor coming?" Like,
mm. I am the doctor.
right, right. So it's using specific examples and what that looks like at the bedside based on my experience, that to make things better for patients and families and us really too,
Mm,
because I think role um, role inequity is such a big thing. I think so many hospitals are so like nurse driven. We kind of talked about that earlier with like recruitment and awareness and appreciation, that I think inequity when it comes to different roles and how we treat people is inclusion. It doesn't have to be about race or gender. So that for me, that's what I did. I am not ready to leave the bedside, but I didn't want to be 65, working 12-hour shifts and stuff. That's just me. So I figured out how I could link them.
yeah, that is great because I am doing my best to transfer, and I actually just started. We just started working at the same company, and that's how I met you through orientation.
Yes. My momentary extrovertedness.
Yeah, you were speaking, you had a whole presentation and
Oh,
everything. Yeah, so that was awesome. And I was just like, and you're an RT too? I gotta have her on my show. I
yeah.
gotta have her. Even though I just came here, I'm a new employee, but hey,
We don't
let's connect.
care.
So how important is an organization when they are trying to develop a diversity and inclusion space? Like, how do they make room for that, especially during these times?
Leadership who values diversity is non-negotiable. That's one of the things that I really looked at was, is this going to be a checkbox? Like, are they saying this so that they can just tell people like we do diversity and inclusion? Like we have these couple of things, so we're diverse.
Mm-hmm.
Or are you really looking at how this is impacting? Because there are multiple studies that show that the workforce, while it's always needed is becoming way more diverse, not just racially and ethnically and gender wise, but ability, the LGBTQ plus. I mean, socioeconomic status and where people came from and where they are now and their ideas about everything. Like it's so diverse on so many different levels that having this level of education and an understanding, an awareness of how to lead diverse teams, how to be a good member of a diverse team, increases productivity. And
Mm-hmm.
so I had to make sure that we really truly had executive sponsors that were really like, my goal is that when my Black son comes here, that he gets treated like everybody else. My goal is that if my daughter wants to be a doctor, that she's going to be treated just like the male doctors. That trans kids that come to our hospital are not going to face discrimination based on our beliefs, that we're not going to have that kind of culture here. But it can't happen. It can't happen if you don't have executive leadership that's willing to move barriers, because we both know everybody's not on board.
No,
Everybody's not on board. So
no.
for me, it was having two people at the head of the line saying, "Nah, you need to move out the way, or you can go ahead and go somewhere else."
We don't want you here.
Right, you don't fit no more.
Well, I believe that is so important because in your orientation speech, I remember you saying that we need diversity and inclusion in the workforce in healthcare because the patients that we take care of are diverse and the patients won't be able to trust if they can have great care if they don't see someone who's like them.
Yeah,
They don't see.
representation matters.
Mhm. Yeah, if they don't see who if they because when I saw like my first black Barbie doll, I was like, "Oh my gosh.
Right? Can't
There
even
are
like
black
describe
Barbies?"
the emotion, right? One of the things, the quotes that I'm a quote girl. I love
Okay.
a good quote. And so one of
Okay.
the things that's been really impactful that makes me think about um how big representation is Whoopi Goldberg
Mhm.
will tell everybody in her interviews she became an actress because she saw somebody on TV that was black that wasn't a maid.
Hmm.
I mean, changed the trajectory of a lot of things because of representation. Not because she knew somebody, not because like she saw someone on TV and then she thought it's possible. It's
Hmm.
possible. And that was it. And just imagine how many other anything, have gone on towards and wanted to be something bigger and better and impacted us just because of representation.
And when you say that, I just got like a thought that when we are not our authentic selves and when we think small and we dim our light, we stop other people who may see us from becoming who they need to become.
Wow.
So
Yes. Yes.
so it's like you being in this position shows me that I can do that too.
Yeah.
And it's just like I think that's part of the belief that I have with this podcast is I want to empower healthcare workers to get into their passions, do what they love to do and do their job as well because when you mix the two, you are a better healthcare worker
Yeah. Yeah.
and you actually like to be at your job because you have other things going on and this is not your only gig.
Yeah. I think too, one of the things that I had to learn, like when we talk about nursing and all the like lateral moves nursing can make, like they can go so many places, there aren't as many places for respiratory therapy. And eventually I was like, you know what? If if I can get if I can be at a hospital that's not super nursing focused and allow a respiratory therapist to transition into all these many positions that they allow nursing to, then like that blows everything up. That like
Mhm.
our skills are just as transferable as nursing. Why have we been limited for all this time? That like
Mhm.
we should really be, I mean, caseworkers, like I
Mhm.
mean, endless. The opportunities are endless. Like our skills transfer so well.
Yeah, and all we need is an opportunity. Like, we're not asking for favors. Like, we are great clinicians and we want to move up. We want to further our career. So we just asking for the chance. Like, everyone needs a chance.
Right. Right. I agree. 100%.
That is so awesome. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. I just like love talking to you. Do you have anything you want to leave with the audience? Any parting words?
Yeah. I was talking to my mentor the other day, and I feel like anytime you're in a caregiver field, you care a lot about your impact on those people. And I was talking to him and I was telling him, how I really want to do a good job. And I wanted to make sure that I was making an impact for everybody that, and, any education that I created, anybody that I came in contact with. And he said, yeah, that's great. Just remember, like, you cannot make everybody happy. So the
Mm.
real question is, who are you willing to disappoint, and are you disappointing the right people? or the wrong people, which made me think now I need to make sure that I'm focusing on a population of people who want to learn, right? Like, what does that look like? But I think for us, keeping in mind, we're not going to make everybody happy, right? So make sure that whoever it is you're disappointing is not the wrong group of people. So you're really hyper focused and being intentional, with what you're doing with yourself.
That is great because sometimes we get like shiny object syndrome and we kind of like, oh, I want to help them. I want to help them. I want to help them. I
Yes.
want to help them. And like, I want to help everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
But you need to like focus. Like, that's what I got when you said that. Like, we need to like focus on one specific thing that we're doing. And we make a greater impact when we focus on something. And it's like when you hit a hammer on a nail, like
Yes.
you hit the nail on the same spot every time, and that hammer just keeps going in, and it keeps like building.
Yep. And then on the flip side, when you have negative people or negative encounters or pushback, maybe that's not the person you're supposed to be trying to make happy anyway. Let them be
Hmm.
mad.
Yeah, yeah.
Don't try to
Let him
convince
be.
them.
Let him be mad. Let
Yeah.
him be mad.
Yeah.
You just gonna be
Take away.
mad
Let
over
them be mad.
there. You just gonna be mad over there, not
Yeah.
in my space. Don't
That's
mess
right.
up my energy.
That's
You
right.
can
We
be
don't want that
mad
over
over there.
here. We don't want that over
We
here.
don't want that over here. Well, thank you so much, Brandy, for joining me on Scrubs Unzipped, Unveiling Healthcare's Hidden Passions. And I hope the listeners are empowered by this episode. And I hope that you like, share, and subscribe, and share it with your family, your friends, even if they are a healthcare worker or not. It's just a great avenue to open up the topic about healthcare workers and learning the passions behind the scrubs. So thank you for joining me and have a great one. Bye.